What is the purpose of creation? What does it mean? Why is anything created in the first place? And why would a God create anything at all? Of course, the arguments on behalf of a creator deity are innumerable and myriad, but whatever the relative strengths and weaknesses of their arguments, there is one singular and inexorable weakness inherent in any argument for a creator, and that is the inescapable act of creation itself. Insofar as a God creates anything, his perfection is immediately nullified. Bear with me for a moment. Consider the act of creation. We observe creation daily in its many forms in our everyday lives. We see the shoemaker creates his shoes for the purpose of giving his customers something to wear on his feet. The artist creates his piece of art so that his patrons have something to be inspired by. And from the purely practical to the ethereal, we see creation every day. But whatever the distinctions in these various creations are, there is one uniting principle behind them all, and that is that the creator, something is created because the creator requires something he lacks. There is a void, and it must be filled. Now, of course, this doesn't cause much of a stir in our everyday finite lives, because we recognize quite rationally that as limited finite human beings, there are going to be times when we're going to be lacking something, when we'll be needing something, and so understandably there will arise the occasion to create something to rectify this lacking. However, this does cause a bit of a problem in terms of a creator God. This causes a problem if one attempts to define a creator God as perfect, because as perfect there can be, by definition, nothing lacking whatsoever, and yet a goal, by definition, exists because one wants what one does not have. All creation has an end, a purpose, a telos, and exists to achieve something. That is its purpose. And yet, even having goals means not having something at that moment. Having desires means having unfulfilled desires. The pursuit of any action implies the absence of perfection. Pursuit of anything implies incompletion, longing, and lacking of whatever is being pursued. Therefore, action itself contradicts perfection because, unless one's actions are superfluous, of course, one only acts to bring about something, some occurrence, which one is currently deprived of. A wholly perfect God can be desirous of absolutely nothing, and therefore, you have to understand that all perfections must be contained in its very existence. Spinoza puts it like this when he's talking about the doctrine of a transcendent creator. He says, "Further, this doctrine does away with the perfection of God, for if God acts for an object, he necessarily desires something which he lacks. Certainly theologians and metaphysicians draw a distinction between the object of want and the object of assimilation. Still, they confess that God made all things for the sake of himself, not for the sake of creation. They are unable to point to anything prior to creation except God himself as an object for which God should act, and are therefore driven to admit, as they clearly must, that God lacked those things for whose attainment he created means, and further, he desired them. This is clear through itself." Now, I can't put it too much more eloquently than Spinoza just did, but this asks a very important question. Why would a God have recourse to creation unless his very essence wasn't wholly perfect from the start, and he was in need of some additional and unforeseen attributes? At this point, omniscience is completely thrown out the window and rendered impotent and impossible. If one is perfect, one does not act. One simply is. Of course, if a religious person wants to salvage the concept of a transcendent creator God, there is still one way they might do that, and that's by admitting that their God is in fact imperfect. There's quite a bit of precedent for this. If we look to the corpus of the ancient Greek gods, that pantheon was rife with very, very imperfect and desirous, needy gods. And there's nothing wrong with that. It just seems a little bit superfluous to give reverence to something that's about as imperfect as oneself. Everyone needs someone, and this seems especially true for gods.